No one's born necessarily a leader. You don't have a single creative out there who's looking at the game industry like, oh, I want to administrate budgets. I've been unable to create a work personality, so I go to work as I am at home. What creates fun experience? We want to enjoy the work that we do. We employ this in game design as self-determination theory. What type of a game can make people feel that they're good at it, that their choices actually matter, and whatever they do actually has a purpose? So why not apply that exact same thinking and framework to how we deal with people and working environments? I do think it's so much about what you pick up from your environment. It's just about finding the right direction, making a good delta. Am I better at this? Am I more palatable? Am I more diplomatic? Am I nicer to work with? Am I clearer and more efficient than a year ago? If the answer tends to be yes, then it doesn't really matter, where you end up in, as long as the intent and the direction is right. I also find that chasing your dream is often much nicer than reaching it.
Welcome once again to the FLT podcast, where we discuss Finnish leadership and other related and unrelated but interesting things. In several previous podcasts, we touched upon various challenges in effectively managing creative teams. It's no brainer that this is a very difficult task, and many beautiful minds out there try it and continue trying to find a recipe or a secret ingredient for making teams effective and happy. Our today's guest has a long-standing career in doing exactly that. Combining people, business, and the creative component in effective and fulfilling ways. It's a great pleasure to have you, Risto Holmstrom, with us today. Welcome to our podcast. And how are you feeling?
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. Lovely sitting with all of you. We're seeing the first snow of the year coming down, and we're looking forward to the conversation. Thank you for inviting me.
As usual, we have prepared an introduction for you, Risto. And Anneli, would you be so kind to introduce our guest, please?
Yes. Risto Holmström, you are a game designer and director with a career spanning over a decade in game design and leadership. Originally from Vantaa, you graduated from the School of Visual Arts in Helsinki. You are a proud father of a baby girl and you write fantasy in your free time. Your goal is to write each sentence as a quotable piece of art. You started your professional career by founding and operating a small but financially successful business-to-business live entertainment company called Inquisitor Black, putting skills with music and business to good use. Your tasks included many things, but also DJing, karaoke singing, and live music performing. Then you joined Rovio Entertainment as a game designer, and you have been part of various development teams behind the iconic Angry Birds game, among other games and things. Altogether, during your professional career, you have founded 3 companies, worked in 10+ studios, and have been part of 20+ game releases. Since May 2024, you work as a general manager at Huge Games, and you describe your task as to, and I quote, create business smart games that are awesome with a capital A. You have said that through your experiences as an entrepreneur and employee in both startups and corporations, you have become equally comfortable in creating huddles and pitching on stage. You have extensive experience in working with and in teams. You have worked in teams of 3 to 150 people in every capacity possible. Through this experience, you believe you have developed a unique capacity for combining people, business, and the creative. Recently, you reflected on the secret sauce of a great game making. You stated, "Truth is, hell if I know, but I do know what you can't make without, and that's trust in the team." And the quote ends. You draw inspiration and learning from the great spectrum of struggles and triumphs that you have gone through and the wisdom of the wonderful experts who you have been fortunate to share your journey with during your career. Over the years, your professional roles involved numerous people management and leadership tasks and duties. In fact, you consider elevating and empowering creative teams as one of your core expertise. You also dedicate a lot of your time to mentoring and coaching. In one of your posts some years ago, you wrote that there are 3 things that differentiate an expert designer from a fresher talent. 1, an ability to approach the challenge through the right questions rather than having the right answers. 2, an ability to make sure that efforts are spent on the right things, considering what's right for the team. 3, an ability to employ a consistent and unambiguous vocabulary and minimize the risks of misunderstandings with every choice of word. Finally, your mission and passion have remained the same over the course of your career. You want to build extraordinary games in ways that make a happy, prosperous team. Is this a fair description of you, Risto? At least it's a very long description. And when have you felt being part of a happy, prosperous team for the last time?
Thank you so much for the introduction. So I can't say it's an unfair description. So much of it is based on fact, and fact does not take sides. But yes, that is indeed my past. So there has been quite a varied collection of experiences without no remarkable plan that has led me exactly where I am, generally being guided by a North Star of what do I want to do now? What's the coolest thing I could do right now? And it has indeed created this type of an introduction, as we just had the opportunity to listen from you. Thank you so much. And when have I last been part of a happy, prosperous team? I would say presently. So it is a very, very good
Is that
situation.
a political answer? Or
Far from it.
Okay.
I've never been successful in politics. I've been unable to create a work personality. So I go to work as I am at home. And it means that things are always close to me, but also I'm positively emotionally engaged in these things. So it is a prosperous and happy team. Historically, I don't believe it's always been the case. I'm sure there's always fluctuations, good times and hard times. But in the time I've now been with Huge for roughly about a year, it has indeed been quite remarkable in every way. We've got a lot of talent, and I think the happiness is growing the more clarity we have, the more agency people feel that they have, and the more proud they feel about the type of project that we are creating. And at the moment, the sentiment at the studio is that that is exactly what we are doing. So at the very least, I will try to maintain that, and if possible, I'll always try to elevate it further.
Excellent. Thank you. I love the agency piece there, especially.
What about the North Star? Has it always been the same, or has it been changing over your career?
That's a great question. I think when I started work life at a very, very young age, I believe the North Star was to get my rent paid and to get some food on the table. And once these weren't an immediate concern, I believe I started thinking more about what is it that I actually want to do. And I was doing fairly well with Inquisitor Black, the karaoke and music and DJ stuff. And I guess I could have happily technically just continued doing that for a while, but I felt that there are more impactful and meaningful ways that I could use my talents. I like to describe myself as a bit of a dilettante in a way, like a professional amateur. I was never the best and deepest expert in any single field, but I have a lot of passions and curiosities and interests. And the best way I could figure out how to combine all of these was actually game design. It's where you can really meld the creative, the business thinking, the leadership, the people parts. And we get to deal with the world's most exciting and interesting problems in many ways. How do we create pieces of engageable entertainment, nonlinear media, the type of things that people like really, really feel passionate about? Define the free time of millions, possibly billions of people across the planet. It's a wonderful opportunity. So that's what I want to do, just employ myself broadly. And I believe the North Star was the same as back then, but how do I approach that and how do I keep walking towards that, I believe has refined over the years. It started with just, hey, I want to make a great game. And then I realized in order to do that, I actually need to learn this and this thing. I need to evolve into another type of position. I want to take a new responsibility for myself. And that's ultimately always been there. And I believe at some point over the years, you start thinking about things like, okay, so what's the development cost? What's the ROAS? What's the resourcing? What's the quarterly budget looking like? And the field just keeps expanding. And you add a few more years on top of that. And then you sort of like focus back on the basics. Let's just make a great game. And how you actually get there is so much about the team. And that's sort of the truth that I believe has been surfacing. That's really underpinning that North Star that I'm always going to be going for.
What about this?
No, I just said, wow.
Yeah. Well, personal kind of reflection, like in my own work. So I do a different type of stuff, but it's also creative here in academia, trying to do some research and write some academic papers and so on. But then at some point you move into more kind of admin positions, kind of leadership roles. And somehow the original idea why you're here in academia kind of becomes secondary. So you realize that you're becoming a leader first, and then academic passion kind of becomes the background. Do you have something like that, or how do you manage these two sides, like leadership in yourself and a designer?
Such an excellent question. And yes, I think anyone is in a position like mine is always going to struggle a little bit with this exact question, because you don't have a single creative out there who's looking at the game industry like, oh, I want to administrate budgets. I want to sit on like screening calls or something, or I want to deal with like a resourcing plan for the studio. No one really starts with that. But I believe that in any position and in any company that you work with, you're always going to have the good sides and the bad sides. And much like in almost any relationship, we try to find the ones that have the bad sides that we can live with. So then the question is the bad side that you want to live with a lack of control or a different type of leadership or project that you're not passionate about? Or for me, the bad side that I can live with is actually the labor of stuff that I'm not too passionate about. But I'm happy to undergo that because I know that it, on a more fundamental level, it enables our team to actually strive for the type of things that would not be otherwise possible. So in like a very brutal way, I could say it's part of the admin stuff. While it's exciting, in its own world, even if it's not the core passion of why I'm here, there is a sort of like taking one for the team type of mentality that you assume that position in order to enable the rest and yourself also to do the kind of things that you're fundamentally excited about. So I sort of look at it as almost like a creative tax in a way. You set aside a portion of your time so that you can create the parameters in which you can actualize yourself in more meaningful ways. And as you do that, I've also realized that people tend to enjoy things that they feel that they are good at. And even if it's not something that you're initially excited about, but when you get to do it more and more and you get more comfortable with it, you feel more secure, you feel native in that type of environment. It gives you a different type of gratification to see that you've got a team who never has to worry about how things are going to work. Things just magically seem to function for them. And having also an increased autonomy for yourself in a way that you've now created this situation where you can be the one negotiating the direction and where does the team go? Where does the project go? So it's a small price to pay in many ways, and ultimately it can also be learned to be a type of a task that one learns to cherish, even if it is not the core reason.
Yeah, so raises a question because there's always all kind of shit that you need to do as a team member and as a, especially as everyone has to do, they carry their piece of shit. And so how do you motivate your people? Are you carrying that or for them?
As much as I can.
Yeah, okay.
So, but there is also going to be times when we're just going to have to do something. I worked once with this wondrous designer Dude was like combining Central European and East European mentality, and we're sitting next to each other on a long night working on some horrible crunch.
Mm.
And I was young, and he was young, but he was mature in ways that I was not. And I think I vented something, unpublishable from my mouth about the task. And he took off his earphones and he looked at me and he told me, "You're not paid to like it. You're paid to do it." And I was like, actually, there is a fair point in this. And there is going to be times like this in any environment that we work in. And I've realized that, especially with the team, I know there's some horrible monstrosity, some really ungrateful crap coming their way. The best way to deal with that is to be in front of it, be honest, be open, be transparent, be with them in the trenches, never lead from the back. If it's possible, I always take the biggest hit from that. It's the same even in a leadership position now. I still work actively with design, and the number one design tasks that I try to take upon myself are the ones that I know are going to reduce the burden on the team the most. Or if there's a piece of work that no one else wants to touch, even with a 6-foot pole.
Yeah.
So then it's like, I'm there, because it's a reward in itself to be able to enable people also to work on the type of stuff that they care about. It's more efficient. It helps them grow, but not always possible. And then a genuine openness, and let's enjoy the crap, let's go into it like an extreme sport type of mentality, and leading with that mentality. I think it's often infectious. The worst thing anyone can do, in my opinion, in that is like push it on other people, be bitter about it, because that propagates. This bleeds into so many different topics, company culture, team culture, leadership culture, all of this. But how you give is how you get. So that's generally where I come from.
And the easiest way is always sort of say that the management wants us to do this.
Oh, yeah. I've done this mistake of throwing someone else under the bus for a decision that ultimately I'm going to have to make sure that it goes through. It was like 10 years ago. I was in one of my first leadership positions and had to give some highly critical feedback, very personal feedback to a designer of mine. And I think I started the conversation by saying that, hey, that guy there can't get along with you because of this and that. And oh God, I still have like PTSD, from the moment of like, why did I have to say that? It's printed in 4K in my memory as like the most embarrassing moment of all of my like leadership experiences. If there is something that needs to happen, something bad, whether it's feedback or a crap piece of work or whatever, lead from the front. Don't distribute that. Don't shove it on other people. Just say it as it is. I think people really appreciate that.
But we all do those mistakes, right? And we have those. Yeah, we wake up at 3 a.m. in the morning and think that why the hell did I say that, and how could I take that back after 10 years?
Oh yes, the embarrassment is real over there. But I do think that one of the things that separates a certain mentality of people is those who learn from it and those who don't. And I definitely try to learn from it. So, and I think this is no one's born necessarily a leader. But I do think it's so much about what you pick up from your environment and how you learn from your actions and your past that really does shape how we become as people to work with. It's same as like how we become as partners, as friends, as workers, whatever it is. We all start from somewhere. It's just about finding the right direction, making a good delta. Am I better at this? Am I more palatable? Am I more diplomatic? Am I nicer to work with? Am I clearer and more efficient than a year ago? If the answer tends to be yes, then it doesn't really matter, where you end up in, as long as the intent and the direction is right.
Do you believe in kind of authentic leadership, where you the point is that you stay true to who you are? Or do you think that leadership always is about acting in some way?
I don't necessarily think those two things exclude each other. So all of us have different values and different personalities somewhere there in the back. And I'm pretty sure that when any of us takes up a first leadership type of position, the first thing that we do is we try to emulate our idea of what it is to be a leader. Okay, now I need to be tough and I need to set a deadline or something. And then we realize we're fulfilling some hidden checklist in our own minds of what does it mean to be a leader. And then we might not feel comfortable with that, or maybe we do. Maybe we exercise self-critique or not. But we start then polishing how we do that. I've certainly done that. The way that I've learned to act in a way is that by looking at all of these different leaders that I've managed to get time with and work with in my many different studios, is that from both the good and the bad, I try to think about how did this make me feel. I try to remember both the good and bad sides, and just taking from that, trying to replicate the good and trying to avoid the bad. What I definitely don't want anyone else to experience what I have, and the good stuff that was really great, how to pass that forward. And yes, it is a little bit of an act, but much in the same way as we develop as people, I believe we develop as leaders. Routine becomes super important. It's employing that consistent vocabulary, making conscious decisions to act in a way that who is the person that you want to be. And the further you manage to do that and the more consistently you manage to do that, it starts becoming second nature. And I think that's when people also feel that it's genuine. That's when you realize that you have changed. So what might begin as sort of an act to be the type of leader that you want to be, it does eventually become yourself. So I think it's about just maintaining that vision that, am I happy with exactly how I am, or is there something I want to work on? And being honest about that to yourself. So yeah, I think it's a bit of both.
Yeah, I think that habit building, Mark Hayton would have a couple of good words on that. He is keen on habits and habit building as a leader.
Oh yeah, something we really do a lot in design work also. We try to employ incredibly consistent vocabulary. It's one of the things that you mentioned in the introduction also. It's about routine. When you have that consistency and predictability and you build those certain patterns, they get easier over time.
Right.
If you practiced art, if you practiced music or a new language or any new skill, we all know it starts out difficult and it doesn't come easy. The more you do it, it becomes second nature. Eventually, you don't have to think about it. It's like great cooking, for example. You just know the right amount of like spice to put in there. You can see, oh, pasta's perfect right now. So it's kind of like that.
But isn't it supposed to be, I mean, the process you're describing is supposed to be creative, right? And if everything becomes kind of, I don't know, formalized, if that's the right word, but there's some kind of, certain ways of doing things, then the creativity might suffer from this.
That's also an excellent question. In my
He
food,
has so good questions. You never say that I have excellent questions.
no, that is an excellent point. Truly, it is something that we balance in leadership and we balance in design all the time. If people are given an entire complete freedom of do whatever and there are no parameters, what we often realize is like choice analysis paralysis type of situations. It creates a lot of stress from people not being sure on what the direction is. And formalizing everything too much, it often strangles the creative in many ways. The parts that I do try to formalize is stuff that I know have universal application, such as in leadership, that's treating everyone like they are gold. Everyone likes to be treated with dignity and respect, given time and attention. No one is ever going to say no to that. The parts that are flexible are, how do we go about things? Maybe someone wants a different starting point. Maybe someone wants more conversation and debate. Maybe someone wants more hands-off and someone craves more guidance. Now that's the parts where you can definitely let go a little bit. And yeah, same with design. When we start working on anything new, whether it's a new game or a new concept or even a small part of a game, like how does this door work in this game, the best results you often find are when you can give people the correct parameters. They understand the sandbox in which they can make those decisions. They know where the boundaries of it are. And when you let them work in that, they can self-direct and self-manage, and that actually improves their experience so much versus just telling them, whatever, make a door. Because that is a sure way to make a lot of people feel lost, and then they're wondering, what do the stakeholders really want, for example. And the same, I think, applies in leadership.
Yeah. It's so interesting that you say that. My husband works as a patent engineer, and he always talks about creativity and innovation. And there is sort of this perception that innovation happens when you have a lot of time and all the freedom to innovate. And it actually does need a deadline. It needs a customer need. It needs something that pressures you on, and then, or the team, and then it becomes a gem. But it's actually almost contradicting what people think.
That is an excellent point.
Isn't it?
It is. And I truly believe in that, because I think a lot of people, when they start in a creative industry, they have an idea of like, what can I make? And, you know, the sky's the limit, and they're just looking in every direction. And that makes being productive incredibly difficult when you don't necessarily have a clear idea of that. And also, as far as creativity goes, I once worked also with another brilliant designer who, in the very early times of my career, I felt a lot of fatigue over these long days of just squeezing every ounce of creativity from yourself and trying to constantly innovate and create and create. It's absolutely like crazy exhausting for the brain. Kind gentleman reminded me that creativity is a muscle. It gets stronger when we use it. And it's the same thing. Once again, habit building, routines. Now I'm writing a book on my free time. I can tell you that I haven't given myself a single day of break over the last 3 years of writing. No matter how tired I am, I open it, I edit at least one sentence or add something, because that routine is what actually makes it palatable and gives me the strength to continue. But the first few months of it are absolute torture, because you are tired after work, you don't have anything left in you, and then you open like these blank white pages and you're like, oh God, please no. And you just want to do anything else but you get used to it, and suddenly you realize your shoulders have grown broader. You have a capacity to carry a lot more than you had before. And if you don't, you get anxious. And then you realize you have this like extra reserve of strength. So routine, parameters, clarity, all of these things are like fertilizer for creative ideas.
Anneli actually just published the book. She has written a book as well.
And
did you follow any routines?
I didn't, because I wrote it in 8 months, and with somebody else. So
you are far more efficient than I am.
But you're so true that when you start, and of course I write because I'm a communicator, so I write a lot. I thought this is an easy peasy thing, you know. I just start writing what I, you know, did as a diversity, equity, inclusion head, and these other things. I just put it on paper. And I mean, after 2 hours, I was, first of all, my adrenaline was so high that I had to start walking around, and and I had perhaps produced half a page, and it was just so, and writing a long text, you know, and you knowing, not seeing that in a couple of hours this is done and dusted and I can send it to proofreading. But actually you need to have that, you know, that tenure to build it on and proofread and course correct, and then think, okay, is this the right order, or should this come before that? And how would the reader perceive if I go this way or that way, and so on. So, but it's it's a totally different thing. Yeah,
that is profoundly relatable.
Yeah.
I think these are exactly the type of things that I've struggled with. Now, I've written before, for example, and I worked with creative endeavors as a profession, so it's not like completely unfamiliar to me. But this time that I've started to write this particular book, I took a different approach. I want to make it professionally competent. And that means that suddenly I'm looking at it with a completely different lens of like, you know, quality, and is the reader going to remain engaged? Is a publisher even going to look at this thing? And one of the big challenges that happens, especially with like writing, is that your taste develops much faster than your technique. So you start writing and you realize that you just lack the raw skill to actually create text that is as good as you would have liked it to be, and it's a lot of iteration, it's a lot of going back and forth, so it's incredibly relatable. Very same things happen in the creative field, but I do believe once again the catalyst for that development is having the mindset for development, having the desire to aim higher than where you are.
So are you trying to write so that every sentence is a quotable piece of art?
Pretty much. So it's setting the bar sufficiently high for myself as an amateur writer. But I believe in aesthetics, and naturally, without having any actual pressure to create this book, in a sense that I don't have a publishing deal, my livelihood doesn't depend on it. Thank God I have a day job. I can actually exercise some ambition without constraint. And for me, one of the things that I've always enjoyed in art is aesthetics and quality. So I'm like, hey, might as well give it a shot and see what happens. So.
Yeah.
What's the book about?
It's a miserable story of a lot of upset people in a fantasy historical setting. Where there is a city that is taken over by a monstrous bigot of a leader, and a lot of people who really disagree with this but are not in the power to do a lot about it. And it follows the story about how do we then go about this thing.
What's the ending?
The ending is,
like to know.
as in any good book, I hope it will make the reader smile and cry and laugh and all of these things possibly together, and I'm not sure in which order.
But I want to know how this ends, you know?
You need to read it. You need to buy it.
No, no, but this, you know, I don't know. I'm the only one thinking that this book is about something else. And actually about the imaginary
put
world.
Put it here, the bigot in the, you know, people miserable.
Yeah.
That's just the normal office life.
It hits a little bit too close home nowadays.
And the big monster. Yeah. Doing something. Yeah, sure. And a lot of people disagreeing with that, but not able to do anything.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I've seen that somewhere.
Your usual day.
Awkwardly familiar. I opened the newspaper today. Wait.
Well,
right.
I have a question. So, since you have such an extensive experience about managing and working in teams, so how do you form a team? How do you form an effective team? Do you have any tips how to do it?
That's really
excellent question.
That is an excellent question, and it's a very fundamental question because I think anyone's going to have to struggle with this. So I've joined existing teams, and sometimes I built new teams. There's a few layers. Naturally, you're looking for just a good spread of skills. Generally, that goes without saying. You want to minimize the blind spots. The smaller the team, the more you want to look for people with a type of founder mentality, people who are not really afraid to take on extra responsibility, people who are very ambitious. The bigger the team, the more specialize the roles you're looking for. But in every case, I would say I will always look for character, aptitude, and ambition. I think these are something that are almost uncompromisable, regardless of who the person is, their age, or where they come from, or their particular talent. I celebrate diversity as much as the next person. And having that type of a chorus of different voices is really good, as long as we never compromise these type of factors. So I always want to maintain a respectful environment. I make sure that that is the tone that is understood by everyone around me. And then naturally, whatever pieces you end up with, because no pieces of any puzzle fit together naturally when you first find them, then it's about, once again, leading from the front and making sure that, by example, you are making sure that they coalesce into something that is more than the sum of their parts.
How do you make sure that the team members also complement each other? So do you bring team members into your recruitment interviews, or how do you?
Yes. Yeah. So I rarely ever conduct any interview one-on-one, except perhaps the very first ones to save time. But the moment I feel like here's a person who might have some pretty good potential for the team, I like to invite people who are stakeholders and people who they might be working with. And I try to invite a conversation, because ultimately a lot of our work, it is about always dealing with other people. So I want to see how the chemistry works there. of what kind of answers these people present, what kind of questions they toss in return. And naturally, that is very important, because when you do take a new person onto a team, you're affecting far more than just your headcount or budget. You are actively affecting the day-to-day work and the palatability of that for each and every person on your team. So there's a very thin line, almost like one of those circus acts where someone's like on a tightrope. It's sort of like that, because you don't want to homogenize the team too much and just take like groupthink. You want people who can challenge, but do it in respectful and good ways. You want to have people who genuinely think different, regardless of how they look or where they're from. You want to have different angles, different experiences, because that is what can really cultivate that type of like conversation that elevates the entire team. And then naturally fostering that type of connection with the team, where everyone feels at a liberty always to keep asking questions and challenging each other. I think of making sure that this person is happy in that type of an environment where no one's word is law per se, and everyone has a part on the stage and in the spotlight. I think that's generally the way to make sure the integration is good.
May I make a totally inappropriate comment?
I celebrate them. Please.
Which includes an assumption that you're quite young, right?
Young.
As a leader, if I look at the leaders that I work for, you're young, right? But I don't know, are you young in your environment as a leader, given your age or tenure in the business? And does that affect, or how does that affect your leadership?
That is a very interesting question. And I haven't really thought about that in a sense. I have thought about the fact that I'm in a privileged position because I'm not considered too old to be unemployable or off the bandwagon of like, hey, youthful and energetic, but I'm also not young in a sense that I'm a fresh blood. So I think I'm in many ways in the most fortunate and privileged position when it comes to people in my industry. So I've got enough experience under my belt, but I'm not old. So I would say that there is probably a lot of unconscious bias that works in my favor in this regard.
Okay.
And the way that I try to employ this is, of course, making sure that no one else would suffer from the other side of the coin, which is the negative bias to talent that is too young or too old. Since I am in a decision-making position, that really helps me propagate that type of culture that looks past these superficial facts. As for how other people view that, I don't have the faintest clue. I believe that a lot of people in my field and industry, they take people at face value, whether they're young or whether they're old. I think I am fortunate enough to work with the type of field that generally is not too ageist.
Right.
It does happen. And I know that the moment you start like knocking on 50 and plus, and if you don't have a job in the games or if your studio went down, it becomes notably harder because people are looking for energy and passion and, are you with the trends at this moment? And that creates a lot of that unconscious bias. So I would say that if there's any bias, it's probably positive for my part, but I try to wield it in a way that is then beneficial for others as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And apologies.
Oh, it's my sincere pleasure.
What about, we had one of the previous podcasts, we actually discussed this issue of not that many females working in the gaming industry. And do you see that as an issue?
I think it's a constant issue, especially when you move forward to games, the kind of games that are played by a more diverse audience. If you're making a very male-heavy racing Wild Western or racing game, something like this, shooter game, then it's not that big of a detriment. But especially the more you work on type of like global games that you want to reach a broader audience, lacking that type of perspective can be difficult. So we don't have the best possible distribution in this sense, and it is something that I would generally like to improve. But once again, first and foremost, whenever we have an opportunity to look at new hires, the first criteria, of course, is going to be who does the job the best. And I try to look past age, nationality, skin color, orientation, gender type of questions and try to understand who is the person inside that head, because everything else is casing. We are machines of bone and sinew and flesh that move around this like slimy tentacle in our heads, and that's who we really are. So I try to look at that first and foremost, but naturally our outer selves do shape a lot of the experiences we also have as people, because we get treated differently in the world. We grow up to different expectations and assumptions, and naturally that always does lend then to a more varied perspective, which in turn is much more fertile for expanding your games beyond their present audiences and expanding your understanding of the questions you're dealing with. So definitely it's something that we can and want to improve as we expand.
Right.
Well, I have a couple of friends who work in the gaming industry, and I know that it's in some ways quite special place, let's put it this way. Because you mentioned that one of the key ingredients for a successful team is trust. To build trust, you need to do something with the team, right? To build this trust.
Yes.
Are there any kind of specific practices or things that you do to build trust in the teams that you're managing?
Very much so. The number one thing comes once again from respect. You trust people to do their job. No one in this industry almost comes here because they're looking for a paycheck. They're looking to execute on their passions and self-actualize. There's way easier ways to make a living than the most competitive industry on the planet that has like catastrophic layoffs and like murderous working hour. No one comes here because it's easy money per se. So you start by trusting that people are here because they are proud of what they do and they want to do a good job. And the respect part comes from whatever people say or do or suggest, you always treat it with dignity and respect. You can imagine that in creative endeavors, such as creating a game, there's going to be a lot of situations where people make suggestions and they take initiatives, and already as a stakeholder or a leader, you're going to realize that there is not a snowball's chance in hell that that makes sense or we should do it. But that is not the way to approach it. What you do is you invite a conversation. You treat every initiative and every angle and every voice with the equal amount of respect. You afford everyone an equal amount of time when they want it. So someone puts out an idea, even if it's not going to work, you go through the motions, you talk about it, you argument it, you break it into little pieces, you debate it, and then you can form a consensus that, okay, maybe it doesn't make sense at the moment, but at least then people feel that the initiative was respected, my initiative was appreciated, and that helps build a type of trust that people are not afraid to put themselves out there. And then as far as the actual like getting the work done, I find that people are generally, like I said, they're ambitious, they're proud. So you let them take it forward. You just make sure that they understand the parameters and that they have the tools to make good decisions. So that comes to making sure that you've painted the boundaries, you've painted the direction for them clear enough that they have the means to take it forward. If you don't do that, then you have to end up having to micromanage, and that reduces, it's like learned helplessness. Then people are not going to take initiative in the same way. So creating an environment where you can trust them and then allowing them to employ that trust helps build confidence and generally like a better sense of agency, as we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
And naturally, that's like from leader to team, but then it works between teammates as well, fostering the type of respectful communication that helps negate friction and unwanted conflicts. And then there's the type of trust that goes from like myself to my stakeholders, whether it's like a CEO or the board or shareholders or investors. And once again, respect, openness, communication, honesty, giving people what they need and trusting that we're all on the same team. There's never a situation where someone's actively trying to sabotage or break your project. Everyone's always trying to do their best. So if there generally is like a type of conflict or friction or a lack of trust, I find it usually stems from a place that people just don't understand each other well enough. So it's about fostering that. And it becomes rocket fuel, generally speaking, for any creative team because less friction, less doubt, more confidence, and people become more willing to put themselves out there.
It sounds like there's an axis of respect and there's an axis of empowerment or autonomy to make decisions. And then what comes out is basically, people learn from each other and they learn together and they contribute and they challenge.
This is generally very much the type of matrix that I would have in my head as well.
Yeah.
So when we talk about what creates, for example, a fun experience, we want to enjoy the work that we do. One of the terms that sometimes we come across in game design is self-determination theory. And it posits that an experience of gratification for a human being comes from three main components, which are competence, autonomy, and relatedness. And we employ this in game design to think about what type of a game can make people feel that they're good at it, that their choices actually matter, and whatever they do actually has a purpose. So why not apply that exact same thinking and framework to how we deal with people and working environments by allowing people to work on things where they feel competent, but that they have enough challenge that they feel that they're developing, to give them the autonomy to decide how they execute on their work. Once again, that requires the understanding of those parameters so they feel safe and enabled to actually go for that. And relatedness, about understanding, why does my role matter? What function is my work going to do? How is it going to help the bigger picture? That falls on leadership to always make clear to everyone how their work also plays into the bigger picture, and to share that appreciation and openness. So I find it's a great framework also for thinking about work satisfaction in this sense.
Yeah, there's been some kind of further developments with this theory lately. So there's a fourth component now, which is meaningfulness. So people also are motivated by doing something meaningful, right? Contributing to a bigger societal kind of betterment and stuff like that.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I think meaningfulness is going to possibly be a different thing to many of us, depending on what drives us. Some people, I believe, are much more heavily driven by their social impact. Some are driven by financial impact. Some are driven by individual excellence, or some are motivated by just helping their other teammates, for example. But definitely, if you're able to understand the type of drives that people have, and there's ultimately not that many from like a very, very high level type of perspective, I think it really helps, once again, drive meaningful change in leadership.
Yeah.
Excellent. I don't have any more questions. I could continue for 2 hours.
Yeah. This could
fascinated listening to this.
Maybe we could do part 2. I think.
We should.
I have one question still. I'm actually quite fascinated with this overall success of gaming in Finland. And what do you think is the reason for that? I mean, what's so special about Finland and Finnish people, leaders who established those companies, entrepreneurs, that this became such a big thing?
I believe that if I had the answer for this, there would probably be a lot more money on my account. So it's one of those random magic pieces of a recipe that I'm unable to break apart. But I would think that there could be something fundamental in the Finnish culture that has a lot of self-reliance, a can-do type of attitude. And I don't believe that Finnish people are big on micromanagement. We rather let people do their thing. We have a lot of trust in, for example, our officials, our doctors, our bus drivers. We have a lot of trust in our institutions and in our schools, and I think that type of mentality propagates into having a lot of trust in your fellow folks that you generally work with. So perhaps maybe it does come back down to that trust question once again, that we create environments where we are efficient because we don't lose time on the unnecessary, and we generally expect and trust people to do their best. And when we do that, often they do.
We don't waste time on small talk. Yeah.
Oh, no coffee machine discussions.
No. Not a very successful joke. Yeah. Maybe very last question is kind of semi-serious. Do you think you have already designed your ideal game already, or is it still to come?
Maybe it's letting on a little bit too much, but what we're working on now with huge games, I believe could be my ideal game.
Okay.
But we're going to have to wait and see where that goes. But I also find that chasing your dream is often much nicer than reaching it in a way, because it is the journey ultimately why we're here. No one chooses also this industry in order to feel that now I'm complete. I've settled down, I've done my game, time to retire. We are here because we want to keep creating. And I think it's the process that ultimately drives us here.
All right. Thank you.
Those words.
Yeah. Great closing statement. Thank you, Risto, very much for very engaging and fascinating
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for your
discussion.
time.
A lot of great points about managing teams, working in teams, and yeah, fascinating. Thanks a lot.
Thank you
you.
so much.